You may hear something big in the next few days. That's because CNN commentator Scott Jennings went on a verbal rampage to call out ABC News and the Democrats for failing to recognize the many falsehoods peddled by Kamala Harris during the last debate. And guess what? Perhaps what was more infuriating to Scott was this CNN panel using lies like the bloodbath comment or the very fine people remark as a way to victim blame Donald Trump for his own assassination attempts. Subscribe to the channel and take a look at this before we dive in.
Here's a fact. He did get pushback from them. They did try to fact check him in real time, but there were numerous questions that she would not answer. And she did tell several lies and got no fact checking. So I think if you're going to lay down a marker that we're going to push back on these candidates, you got to do it to none or you got to do it to both. They asked her directly in the very first question, if she thought they had any responsibility for the economic conditions or that people were better off than they were for, and she completely ignored it. They asked her on immigration. Why did you wait until 6 months before the election to do anything? And she completely ignored it. And so fact-checking and Barb's aside, those are the two most important issues in the election. They asked her, she completely ignored them, and they spent all their time going after Trump and didn't follow up on any of that. I thought it was ridiculous.
Look at this panel and you realize how cornered Scott Jennings is despite stating an obvious truth. But it wasn't just the questions around immigration, border security, and the economy that Kamala Harris refused to take head on, but also some extremely important questions of accountability that were never even asked. That included the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan that left a staggering $7 billion worth of military equipment in the hands of the Taliban. It also includes questions of her blindly pushing for a second Biden presidency until the last minute, despite knowing that Joe Biden's health didn't allow it. And even the question that she did answer, what we mostly got was a confused word salad and empty platitudes that wasted precious time in the debate. And honestly, should that even be allowed in a debate? There were more than enough instances of Kamala simply filling up the duration of her answer while not really saying anything. Instead of being stopped and forced to answer, filibustering and deflecting by answering completely different questions just isn't acceptable in congressional hearings, and it shouldn't be allowed in presidential debate. The audience and the voters' time is too valuable for that, especially when the candidate needs to be cornered over flip-flopping on very important issues so quickly without explanation. That was also a consistent theme from Kamala Harris in the debate that Scott Jennings ripped into.
Here's my nightcap. I was scrolling through the debate news today, and I read headlines that say things like, why Kamala Harris has embraced America's oil boom. Harris embraces U.S. fossil fuels. Harris, frack on, my dudes. Harris embraces oil and gas on debate stage. And then I heard her say she's a gun owner. And so I know this is going to break your heart.
No.
I just want to once again welcome we got a Democrat who's out here trying to pump oil and buy guns.
She's going too far to the right.
And I don't know if she means it or not, but it is a step in the right direction when a national Democrat can embrace fossil fuels and gun ownership at the same time. Welcome, Kamala Harris, honorary Republican of the night.
That's a good thing.
That's not all. Kamala Harris even reversed her stance on the electric vehicle mandate that she advocated for that would outlaw vehicles that weren't carbon neutral by 2035. And while you'd think that the ABC News moderator who seemed to have fact-checked notes ready for Donald Trump would also remind Kamala Harris that she's previously supported things like mandatory gun buybacks or a ban on fracking, it feels like switching positions on those is pretty hard to miss, especially since that's been a consistent theme for a strand of the Democratic Party on the debate around environmentalism and gun rights.
Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
I support buybacks.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory.
I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
You're not going to hear a recognition of that on any left-wing echo chamber, much less on a panel on CNN with such a skewed ratio of political diversity. That's why even Anna Navarro from The View decided to make an appearance, giving us some of the most tone-deaf comments about the last presidential debate that only someone in a curated social media bubble could make listen to this.
I've barely ever seen, after a debate, people laughing at a candidate, not with a candidate. There were so many memes, there were so many TikToks today, there was so much coverage. No. There was so much coverage.
But that's curated to you in your feed, right?
Well, I mean, but there was people
that might have been the situation
that were shooting folks at bars, folks at debate watches. listening to Donald Trump and bursting out in laughter at how absurd and
people are not
she
at a
was.
debate watch party, though. A swing voter who's probably not that invested in politics is not at a debate watch party. That's
which is probably
abnormal
Don't
behavior.
you think maybe that swing voter is getting some of the memes of Donald Trump
Possibly, yeah.
being laughed at and being
I'm sure there are memes on the other side, too.
Nobody was impressed, especially because you expect to hear more sophisticated ideas from a panel discussion like this. Debate watch parties of the kind that she's describing are mostly people of the same political bent coming together to watch. Somewhat like watching a sports match when you're supporting the same team, you don't use debate watch parties or online memes to judge the efficacy of a political candidate. And you certainly don't do that when the matter is as grave as political violence, which is what also happened on CNN's panel just a day after the second attempt on Trump's life.
Look, when you've had this kind of language about somebody be the underpinning of a campaign for years and intensely for the last several months, the only way to unwind it is for the people who've been saying it, chiefly the president and the vice president, to go on TV and say, you know what? We went too far, and what we said, honestly, is not true. The country will not end.
Okay, I think the Democrats will tamp down their language about Trump. The moment Trump tamps down his language about the Democrats, about immigrants, about people of color, about women, and not a moment before.
What about how many times are we going to shoot at him?
Is your argument literally
Wait a minute, but
that you are not under threat unless somebody directly takes a shot at you? Is that actually what you're saying?
Scott Jennings shut that down quickly, but isn't it an interesting window into how blind political allegiance can make you overlook or minimize political violence? There's no place for that in the country, and you'd hope everyone would agree. Unfortunately, that's not the impression that you get when it's Donald Trump himself being saddled with the blame for turning up the knob on the political heat. Well, also facing 2 attempts on his life within 2 months. Perhaps that's just a window into how polarized and narrow most of the political discourse on mainstream media has become. Let me know in the comments what you think about this, because segments like this really do tell you why the legacy media's relevance is fading away into the oblivion.